wanted to know more about it. My wife always tells me to talk about it because of the hearing issue. So I want to give you a little background on Bishop Joe, but I could have added some stuff from his cousins and some of the guys that knew him before, you know, but anyway, and I'm sure he'll tell you a little bit about his background too, but just to give you, this is a short synopsis. So he was born in Minnesota, okay, but he was raised in Philadelphia. He's really a Philadelphia guy. All right, Jack, where's Jack? Sorry, where's Jack? He's the fifth of 9 children. He's a proud uncle of 46 nieces and nephews, plus 42 great nieces and nephews, and you might have had a couple more at it. Yes. Anyway, he graduated from LaSalle in 1982. Yeah, spent a year of study at the Sorbonne University in Paris. And then he started to find out what his career should be. So after college, he worked as a grade school teacher, a ski instructor in Switzerland, and in the automobile industry in Germany and Belgium for 5 years. Heeding a call to the priesthood, he attended St. Charles Borromeo Seminary and graduated with a Master's of Divinity degree. He was ordained in 1996, and he earned a second master's degree in moral theology in 2000. While in the seminary, he entered the U.S. Navy chaplain program and spent 9 years in the Navy Reserve. After 5 years in parish ministry, he became a full-time Navy chaplain in 2001. His duty assignments as Navy chaplain included Combat Assault Battalion, Okinawa, Japan. Division Officer and Command Chaplain on board USS George Washington, including 6-month deployment in the Arabian Gulf. Command Chaplain at U.S. Coast Guard Training Center, Cape May. That's in New Jersey, by the way. Marine Air Group 39, Camp Pendleton, California. 7-month deployment to Camp Leatherneck in Afghanistan. U.S. Navy Recruiting Command, St. Louis, Missouri. Command Chaplain on board the USS Ronald Reagan in Yokosuka, Japan, with 6-month deployment in the South Pacific Ocean, and Assistant Chief of Staff for the Religious Ministry, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, California. And just some of his military awards. Meritorious Service Medal, Navy Commendation Medal with 2 gold stars, the Navy Achievement Medal with 2 gold stars, the Navy Sea Service Medal, the National Defense Medal, the War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, the War on Terrorism Service Medal, and the NATO Service Medal. And the Navy people understand this. The NATO Service Medal plus 3 Battle E ribbons. So with that, I'll introduce Bishop Joe.
Thank you, Larry. Some of that's true. Now, you might have noticed me limping. On this Wednesday, I'm getting a total hip replacement. Don't get old. So, my brothers and sisters in Christ, good afternoon. So, I'm sure a lot of you were at Mass, so you've already heard a little bit of my talk at Mass. But for those of you who weren't at Mass, my name is Bishop Joe Coffey, and I'm with the Military Archdiocese. And that means everybody who's Catholic in the military belongs to the Military Archdiocese. So we have Archbishop Timothy Broglio as our military archbishop, and he has 5 auxiliary bishops who help him. 4 of those bishops cover all the bases, our United States military bases around the world, and I cover the veterans hospitals. So my job is to make pastoral visits to our over 150 VA hospitals around the country. And I know we have some veterans out there. If you're a veteran, could you please stand and be recognized? So thank you very, very much for your service, and I'm very proud to be your vicar. I'm originally from Philly, and this coming month, I'll be ordained 30 years as a priest, and now 7 years as a bishop. So today I'd like to share a little bit about my story of how I became a priest and a bishop and a Navy chaplain. But I'd like to share a couple of my earliest memories of my childhood in Margate, New Jersey. My mom was Rosanita Schubert Coffey, and she was the younger sister of Rita Schubert Rosenberger. And the Rosenbergers had Rosenberger Realty, and my uncle Hubert was a German-American who proudly served our U.S. Army during World War II, but we knew him as Uncle Hoobie. And when I was about 3 years old, Aunt Reed and Uncle Hoobie invited me and our family to stay in their basement apartment in Margate. So I grew up as a kid going to Margate for a couple summers, and I have very, very wonderful memories. They lovingly shared their home with us, and it was just wonderful to go there and to spend time with my cousins, the Rosenbergers. I remember there were many, many of us who would go to the beach all day long, and there were maybe a dozen of us, and Jerry, our cousin, who was about 12, was in charge. So I think it was God and the guardian angels who kept us safe. I have vivid memories of going into the ocean and running up the hot sand and rolling around the hot sand and running back to the ocean, back to the hot sand, rinse and repeat. We would do that over and over and over again. At the end of the summer, we'd go home completely black because there was no such thing as sunscreen back then. We'd get completely fried, but then it would eventually turn to tan. My cousin John Rosenberger, who became a very successful lawyer and judge, worked at Steel Pier, and I remember visiting John. And my cousin Jody and Debbie worked at a dairy bar, and we ate a lot of ice cream, and I think we paid for some of it. Jeffrey followed in the family of business, became a very successful realtor himself. And Billy and Andrea were always with us at the beach. So then we played we had a lot of fun in Castle's parking lot where we rode our bikes. And I remember visiting Lucy, the elephant, many times. And I had one and only trip to Storybook Land because they left me behind. That's a true story. They discovered at dinner time that I wasn't there. And I think they called Storybook Land and go, oh yeah, we have him. But he's just fine. We're giving him anything he wants to eat. So the kids went to Holy Spirit High. And I still remember the fight song. Goodbye, Atlantic High, we're gonna pop your eyes someday. See our name hanging in the Hall of Fame. If you're Atlantic High fan, my apologies. In 1967, I was 7 years old. We were able to buy a summer home in Avalon, New Jersey. And my Uncle Hoobie was the one who negotiated for my parents because it was actually at an auction. And Uncle Hoobie, who knew real estate, knew this was a good deal. And we got the house for $30,000, beachfront. And my parents' friends thought they were nuts for spending that kind of money on a house at the shore. But my mom always used to say, we weren't lucky, we were blessed. So every summer we would go down there when the day school ended, and we would come home on Labor Day. So Labor Day was the saddest day of the year, and it still is for me. My dad was a weekend warrior, so he'd come down Friday afternoon, go back up on Sunday, and Mom had us for the rest of the week. My first job was at the Avalon Bakery, 1974. I cleaned the sheet pans for $1.75 an hour. At the end of the week, $75. That was real money for a 14-year-old. I never had an allowance. I kind of thought allowance was for losers. I'd like to have my own job. And then I spent 8 years at the Golden Inn, which is now the Icona Golden Inn. So very, very happy memories from the Jersey Shore. Definitely my second home. So after graduating from St. Matthias Grade School in Ballackinwood, I went to Archbishop John Carroll High School. It's right near Villanova, where the Pope went to college. I went to LaSalle College, and I went to Paris my junior year studying French at the Sorbonne. It was a really wonderful year of my life. I have very happy memories of my hair down to here, bopping around Paris with a big loaf of bread, a hunk of cheese, and some cheap red wine. It was $1 a bottle, but it was French. It wasn't that good, but it was French. And I just remember enjoying myself very, very much. And after that, I had a 2-month Eurail pass where I had unlimited train travel all over Europe, riding the trains. So that was really, really fun. I graduated in 1982 with a double major in English and French. So I thought, okay, now I have to get a job. So what am I supposed to do? So I thought I would get a job as a teacher. I thought, well, I could probably do that. So I went and I got an interview at St. Francis de Sales Catholic Grade School in West Philadelphia. And the principal was Sister Winifred. And I remember the interview quite well. She basically said, "You're Catholic? Yeah. College grad? Yeah. You go to church? Yeah. You're hired." And I stayed the whole year. I didn't quit on her early. But I knew after a couple weeks I was not cut out to be a Catholic grade school teacher. It's hard work. If you've ever been a teacher, it's physically very, very tiring. I found out that Sister Winifred said to the lady teachers, I found this out at the end of the school year. She said to the lady teachers, "Hands off Mr. Coffey. He is not available because he's going to become a priest." And I used to say to her, "Sister, I don't think so, but thanks anyway. That's very nice of you." Well, 14 years later, of course, she was at my first Mass. I then got a job in Switzerland as a ski instructor. That sounds really cool, and it is, but I really wasn't that good. But I was able to teach beginners. So I was qualified for that. And then the snow melted, and I had to get another job. So this time, my brother Bill was living in London. Had been there, he was there for 11 years altogether, had a couple kids there. And my brother Tom had gotten a job in Schweinfurt, Germany. And he said, "You want to get a job, you can stay in Europe." So I ended up getting a job selling Japanese cars to American soldiers in Germany. Now that's perfect preparation for the priesthood. So that was a very, very fun job. I traveled all over Europe and just really enjoyed traveling and learning a little bit of German, a little bit of French, a little bit of Spanish. It was just so darn fun. So I came home in 1988, September. Really wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. Got involved with some pro-life work. I got involved with a young adult Bible study. Still was not thinking about priesthood, but really praying hard, like, "Lord, what am I supposed to do now? What do you want me to do?" And I really didn't know, and I was getting close to age 30. So I'll never forget, it was the moment that I went to a Malvern retreat. If you know where Malvern is, it's the largest lay-run retreat house in the country. It's a beautiful retreat house. And there's a statue of Jesus kneeling in the Garden of Gethsemane. You know Malvern. It's right at the bottom of the big hill. And I knelt down in front of that statue, and that's when it hit me. I think I'm supposed to become a priest. And I'll never forget that moment. That was 35 years ago. I was 30 years old. I went home to tell my parents. They were already in bed. I knocked on their bedroom door. They said, come on in. My mom, for many years, swore that she knew what I was going to tell them. So I got all choked up, and I started crying, and they started crying. Very emotional moment for me that I finally figured out what my calling is for life. And then I told my brothers and sisters. Well, guess what they said? Duh! They said, we've known for years. Maybe my cousins knew it also. But, yeah, I said to them, well, you could have told me. So I went to St. Charles Seminary in Philadelphia. I entered in September of 1990. And it was there, starting to become a Philadelphia diocesan priest. I met Father Chris, who was a year behind me at seminary. And I met a recruiter for the chaplain candidate program for the U.S. Air Force. So he was in dress blues, he was a priest and a military officer, and he was handing out brochures on the chaplain candidate program. And that's a program where if you already have your college degree and you're in graduate school, if you get the permission from your bishop and you get accepted by the program, you raise your right hand and you become a chaplain candidate in the reserve. I remember asking this priest a lot of questions, and he could tell I was getting very interested, and I think he was ready to sign me up. And then I think I had to ruin his day. I said, does the Navy have a program just like it? He goes, yeah, the Navy program's in San Diego. Father, I'm going to San Diego. Because my dad had been in the Navy as a doctor. My little brother Jim, who's now a deacon, he was in the Navy at the time. He'd gone to Villanova, fine school, almost as good as LaSalle. And he was in the Navy at the time, stationed in San Diego. So I asked my bishop, Cardinal Bevilacqua, if I could apply for the program because he needed permission of your bishop. And he said, I know all about the program. I'll let you apply, but don't even think about asking for active duty for at least 5 years after ordination. I said, that sounds good to me. So I applied to the program. I got accepted. I went off to San Diego for the summer. And for the next 9 years, I stayed in the reserve and really, really enjoyed it. And I got ordained to be a priest in 1996, and I went to St. Catherine of Siena in Torresdale, northeast Philly. And it was a wonderful parish, made some great people there. Did some marriages over there that are still lasting strong today. It's good. And there were 700 kids in the school. I used to play basketball with the kids. Do you know how much fun it is to block the shot of a second grader? I was like Shaquille O'Neal. So I did many weddings and baptisms and funerals. It was really, really fun. I loved being a local assistant pastor. My pastor was Monsignor Jim McBride, who we're very good friends with today. He's now 95, and he's living at the Villa in Dartmouth, where the priests live in Philadelphia. And after my surgery, I'm going to stay at the Villa for a week and watch the Phillies games with Monsignor McBride. That'll be a great place to recuperate. So, so after 5 years as a priest, I then had permission to write my letter to the cardinal. And I wrote the letter and I said, Your Eminence, I've been waiting 9 years to write this letter. You're still my bishop. I said, I love being a parish priest, and I really did. I said, but I think I'd also like to be a Navy chaplain on active duty. May I have your permission? I didn't hear a thing for 3 months, and I thought he might say no. He might say, you can stay in the reserve, but I need you here in Philly. And I was prepared for that to happen, but I really wanted to go Navy. So I knelt down in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and I said, Lord, I love being a parish priest, but I think I'd like to be in the Navy on active duty. What do you think? The next day, I got the letter giving me permission to go on active duty. So I went off to Camp Johnson, which is near Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And those of you who have been in the military, remember how much fun the gas mask drill is. It's pretty awful. You got to go into a room full of gas, and you're wearing a mask, and the mask is working fine. You got to take the mask off. And close your eyes, and don't breathe or you'll die. And then you put the mask back on, you clear the mask, and blow it out, and then you start breathing again. That's how you do it. But even if you do it correctly, it's awful. You come out and you're disoriented, you got snot coming out. That was fun. Well, that's the condition we were in when they came running out of the classroom, screaming at us. But it wasn't normal screaming. We thought, well, I don't know, we're in trouble with these push-ups or something. We didn't know what was going on. We walked into the classroom, and on the television set was 9/11. So everybody in this room knows where they were on 9/11. That's where I was. I was in a room full of brand new baby Navy chaplains. We're going to go serve on active duty with the Marines, and we're watching the World Trade Centers come down. And I remember specifically what I was thinking and feeling. I was sick to my stomach, and I was afraid. And I knew that at that precise moment, people were dying. And they were, a lot of them. And I felt afraid because I just left a nice safe factory in Philly, and I'm going to go to the Combat Assault Battalion, Okinawa, Japan, for my first assignment. And I was scared because in our nation's history, we've lost a couple chaplains that have died on active duty, Father Capodanno, Father Capen, and others. So I knew the history of the chaplain corps, and I thought, well, Lord, you just got to take care of me. But in the chaplain corps, when we deploy, we have what's called a religious program specialist, an RP, and they are our bodyguards. And when we deploy, when I went to Afghanistan, my RP, Trevor McCracken, never left my side, and he took good care of me. And I remember we'd go into the village, and we'd be surrounded by people, and he was like an eagle eye, never taking his eye off everything. His one job was to keep me safe. And I remember I was like a giant compared to these little kids. But they were afraid of me because I spoke the international language. I had chocolate in my pockets. And this guy was in Afghanistan with me. Let's hear it for him. So I have some pretty good memories of Okinawa. When I got there, it was I was the battalion chaplain, so there were 900 Marines and me. I was their priest. I was their chaplain. They got me. They didn't ask for me. They got me. And I remember the rain coming down so hard it was coming down sideways, just torrential rain. We were getting soaked to the bone. And I remember thinking to myself, the second I don't want to be here, I'm in big trouble. I thought, no, I want to be here. I'm their chaplain. They called me combat chaps, and I was motivated, and I wanted to keep them motivated. So I just soldiered on. I remember at one of those humps, one of the Marines was having trouble with his leg. He had a hard time with his heavy backpack. So the Marines and the sailor were taking turns carrying his pack. So they had their own pack on their back, then his pack on their front. And they were taking turns helping this guy. And I said to the sergeant, I'll take a turn. He said, chaps, we got this. Don't worry, we got it. I said, Sergeant, I'll be taking that pack. I pulled rank. I hardly ever did that. So I took this guy's pack, and after about 5 minutes, I said to myself, oh, that was a mistake. So I said, next! But that was just one of my great memories of Okinawa. So my next tour duty was my hardship tour. Cape May, New Jersey. I was the command chaplain at Coast Guard Boot Camp. Coast Guard Boot Camp is no joke. It's a serious boot camp, and they get a lot of drilling, training, a lot of push-ups, sit-ups. It is not a joke. Because think about what the Coast Guard does. They go out in the worst possible storm when everyone else is running for high ground. They're going into these horrible storms, so they got it tough. But I did a lot of counseling, and I think I tried to save a couple guys who wanted to quit because The first couple of days, their minds were completely shattered. If you can remember boot camp, how much fun that was, right? It's horrible. They break it down and they build you back up. So some people want to quit right away. But if they all want to quit, they all let them go. There's not going to be any military. So they say, oh, go see the chaplain. So I'll never forget this one kid. I'm counseling my heart out. And this kid's not even listening to me. I could tell. And I finally said to him, it's like I'm talking to the wall. And he goes, even the chaplain's yelling at me. True story. A couple weeks later, he comes back and says, sir, I just want you to know, I want to come back here as a drill instructor. Total transformation. That's what the drill instructors can do. It's pretty amazing. So I then went on to my first carrier tour. I ended up having 3 carrier tours. The first one was out of Norfolk, Virginia, the largest U.S. base in the world. And when I was on the USS George Washington, I absolutely loved carrier duty. I was the flight deck chaplain. We crossed the Atlantic in January, where it was bitter, bitter cold. And 6 months later, the Persian Gulf was like 110 degrees every day. And these 18-year-old kids are on that flight deck for 78 hours at a time. Incredible what our military does. These young people, the guy driving the ship might be 19, the guy or the girl. It's unbelievable the amount of responsibility we give them. When the chaplain, the priest is on the carrier, you go out as a strike group. The surrounding ships are with you. You go out as a strike group. Carrier's the middle. They call carrier mom. They always know where mom is because they protect the carrier. Well, the other smaller ships don't have their own chaplain. So we would fly from the main ship to the smaller ships by helicopter. Whenever the chaplain was on board, they called the Holy Helo. And I just loved doing that. It was so much fun. I had our little mass kit. We'd show up, say mass in the cafeteria. It was just fantastic duty. 10 years later, I was on that same ship, but now I was the command chaplain, I was the full commander, and I was the command chaplain, and we were out of Yokosuka, and I went to the South China Sea, which is in the Pacific Ocean, and one of my great highlights from that tour was, I'm sure all of you remember the Battle of Iwo Jima in the war, the flag raising, Mount Suribachi. I said mass on top of Mount Suribachi. It was a very, very special moment. I looked down at the black sand beach, and I said mass for all those who died at the Battle of Iwo Jima. It was a horrific battle. We lost thousands. The Japanese lost thousands. It's a very sacred island today. You can't just go there as a tourist. Japanese can't go there. Americans can't go there. The only people that go there are the military. And I got a chance to go there, and I just walked from the airfield to Mount Suribachi with my mass kit, and by myself, I just said mass for all of the troops. And then I went to Afghanistan. I was in Helmand Province. I was there for 7 months, and I worried about 2 things: getting shot by a sniper and the IEDs, the bombs that blow up. We had these things called Humvees and MRAPs. These are gigantic, heavily armored vehicles. And they just kept building bigger IEDs. So one of the camps I went to was like the world's most expensive junkyard. There were many of these expensive Humvees and MRAPs just destroyed by these IEDs. So as I said, I had an RP who took care of me, and I really enjoyed my time with the Marines. 3 tours. First one was Okinawa Combat Assault Battalion. The second one was MAG 39 out of Camp Pendleton. I had all the helicopter squadrons. I had the Hueys, the Cobras, the 46s. I just loved being the chaplain at the base there. And then my final tour was at Marine Corps Boot Camp, San Diego. Again, I was the command chaplain, talked to a lot of recruits and staying in the Marine Corps, and I just loved being the command chaplain there. Fantastic duty. That was my second tour of the San Diego area. I ended up spending 6 years altogether in San Diego. It's very nice. People ask me all the time, how do you like San Diego? I said, oh, it's very nice, but it's no New Jersey. So, it was in San Diego in January of 2019. 7 years ago already, when I got the call from the papal nuncio.
Oh, wow.
He's the representative of the Pope. Every country that has diplomatic relations with the Vatican has a nuncio. So the nuncio, his job is to tell the priests when they've been named as a bishop. So here's what happened. I'm in San Diego. I'm about to go into work at the base there as the command chaplain boot camp. And I get a phone call, but I'm in the shower. So I don't hear the call. So I get the voicemail. And it was a very strange sounding voice. It was a French voice. And he says, "Hello, Father Coffey. This is Archbishop Christophe Pierre. I would like to have a conversation with you. Please call me." Does that sound normal? No. I thought, maybe a scam. You ever been scammed? It's pretty horrible. You know, there's some dishonest people out there. They don't tell you the truth when on the phone. It's horrible. So I thought, it's very possible that this is a scam. So I thought, I don't want to get scammed. So I came up with a plan. And here's my plan. I was going to call him back. But if he asked me for money for a charity, I was going to be a little bit suspicious. And if that had happened, I would have said, that sounds fine. I'll check that out. I'll check with Archbishop Broglio, because he's my military archbishop and I know him. That was my plan. I thought it was a good plan. Before I had a chance to call him back, I get a text message from Archbishop Broglio, and it was very bizarre. He said, "Joe, I'm on the East Coast. Call me at 12 noon if you need to talk." What does that mean? I now know it's not a scam, but think of the wording of those two things. Am I in trouble? I didn't think that. But I thought, am I in trouble? The way those two things were worded. And I thought to myself, should I be in trouble? I couldn't think of anything, which is good. So I went into my office, I called the number, and I got Archbishop Christophe Pierre, the papal nuncio. And he said, "Hello, the Holy Father has appointed you to be an auxiliary bishop for the military archdiocese. Do you accept?" It was the most bizarre thing I'd ever heard in my whole life. I was like, oh, that's what this is. I just couldn't believe it. I was just so discombobulated. I don't remember what I initially said. I just said something. He asked me a second time, "Father Coffey, do you accept?" Oh, no, he wants an answer. And you have to try to understand my frame of mind. I was not prepared to answer him. It was too crazy. So I said to him, "Can I think about it? Can I pray about it? Can I call Archbishop Broglio? And can I call you tomorrow?" "Father Coffey, do you accept?" It was cold. It was cold. And I felt a little bit nauseous. I really did. I thought I might make me get sick. So I prayed. It's always a good idea. I prayed. I said, "Lord, I need you right now. Not tomorrow, not in an hour. I need you right now," because he was expecting an answer. And I thought, I can say no. That became clear to me. But if I say no, I better have a darn good reason why I'm saying no. I couldn't think of a reason. But if I say yes, I know my life's going to change, and it did. So I prayed and I said, "Lord, help me." And then I remembered in my priesthood, I had read a book by St. Francis de Sales who said, "Seek nothing, refuse nothing." And that gave me peace, because I hadn't sought this. So I said, "I accept." And he said, "Good. My secretary will call you in 1 hour. You're not to tell anyone about this conversation except Archbishop Broglio until January 22nd, when it's going to be revealed at a press conference in Rome at 12 noon. Have a nice day." And I remember sitting down and thinking to myself, did that just happen? I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm dreaming. And I just kind of sat there. About an hour later, his secretary called to get my address so he could send a letter from the papal nuncio's office. And then I called Archbishop Broglio. I'm allowed to call him, but not my family. I said, "Archbishop!" He said, "I assume you said yes. Congratulations." So he knew about it, obviously. I said, Arthur, I did say yes, but you remember, though, I have 19 years on active duty, not 20, right? He said, oh, really? I think he thought I had at least 20 years. Because here's the problem. You can't be on active duty and have a part-time job. That's against the law for all you taxpayers, right? It's like a doctor, full-time in the military, also having a practice on the side. You can't do it. So that was a potential problem. So I got ordained. I was able to make the phone call. 8 days later, I called all my family, starting my oldest brother, Bill, to youngest. I didn't want to forget any of them. And telling my own family that I was now going to become a bishop was very, very, it was very powerful. And so I got ordained to be a priest on, a bishop, March the 25th, 2019. Before COVID, thank God, because there were 1,000 people in the Basilica in that conception, hundreds of priests, my family was there. It was a very, very incredible moment in my life. The pension thing worked out okay because the bishop that I was going to replace, Bishop Higgins, he stayed on an extra year for me. So that after I got ordained a bishop, I went back to San Diego and did my old job for another year, and then put the bishop job on hold. So that's how I became a priest, a bishop, and a Navy chaplain. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah. Well, my current role is as an auxiliary bishop for the military archdiocese assigned to the VA hospitals. So my job is to make pastoral visits to the priest chaplains who work at the VA hospitals. So Archbishop Broglio endorses them, just like he endorses all military chaplains. And so I'm their vicar, so if they're having any trouble or problems, I can try to help them and try to keep them motivated and things like that. So that's what I travel around the country visiting them.
We didn't know too much about the military archdiocese. I was surprised that there's other military people who want to.
Oh yeah. We have federal employees around the world. They belong to us too, like State Department people. So if they need sacramental help, we can help.
Bishop, first I want to say thank you on behalf of the Knights of Columbus and our parish for speaking with us.
I forgot to tell you, I'm a knight, 4th degree knight.
I'm the Veterans Chairman for our council here, and one of the projects that we're very highly involved in is suicide awareness. And as you know, I know a lot of veterans here know, suicide is the #1 priority of the director of the VA and this current administration and past. Right now it's 17 per day. Do you get involved in anything in your ministries to help with suicide, people who are PTSD, considering these kinds of things, and how does your ministry assist with that?
Well, that's such an important topic. When I was at Cape May boot camp as the command chaplain, I gave 2 talks to every group coming in. The first one was on stress management. The second was on suicide awareness or prevention. So I talked about to every recruit for 3 years that went through Cape May to get them to know about it. As far as the VA, we're losing about 17 a day nationally to suicide. And that's really tragic. I mean, all of our veterans have a story, obviously. Any time I'm on the driving and I see a guy with a sign, homeless veteran, it breaks my heart. Because at some point, it all went off the rails. I mean, they were in the military, they were getting paid twice a month, they were paying their bills, they were serving their country. And then a series of things happen, they get out of the military, maybe they think this is horrible, I hate the military, they quit. Maybe they have a drug problem, maybe they have alcohol problem, maybe they have some moral injury problems, the things they had to do in the military, which is causing them a tremendous amount of PTSD. There's all kinds of reasons, but I can honestly say the VA is doing everything they can think of. They have counselors, they have psychologists, they have psychiatrists, they have chaplains, they have support groups. And they're always, always, always reaching out to the veterans saying, how can we help? So our priests are part of that team as chaplains. And so they're leading support groups of the veterans at the various hospitals. So I just support the priests who are actually meeting with the veterans.
Bishop, one other question too. I just heard from the director of, I guess, war that made the announcement on the chaplain rank.
Yeah.
That, you know, I know when you're wearing your military outfit, you have your rank.
Yeah.
Lieutenant colonel, general, whatever. But now they just put your chaplain bar there. What are you hearing about that?
Yeah, it's actually how the British Navy, the British military does this also. And the theory is that when you're the chaplain talking to a service member, you assume the same rank. So if he's a private, you're talking to a private. If he's a general, you're a general talking to the general. That's the theory. And so they're going to have where you have your chaplain insignia. So all Catholic and Protestant chaplains wear a cross. So you know that's a Christian. It's either a Catholic or a Protestant or a Orthodox priest. The Jewish people have the is it the Star of David? No, it's the Ten Commandments, the tablets. The Muslim chaplains have a crescent moon. The Buddhists have their own like prayer wheel symbol, but they're not going to wear their actual rank. They're still going to have rank, so they'll still be promoted like everyone else, but they won't be wearing the rank. So the hope is that more people will reach out to them for counseling, not be intimidated by the rank. Now that's the hope. My fear is that they're going to lose some influence. I know every time I got promoted, I never took it for granted, ever, because a lot of good people don't get promoted, and so I was very blessed that I got promoted. But every time I got a higher rank, I thought, how can I use this higher rank to help more people? Because if Captain Coffey calls somebody and they see the rank, that might mean more than if just Father Coffey or Chaplain Coffey. So I hope that it works out. We'll see how it works.
Bishop, I have a question for you. You've had such a storied career. Congratulations. The fact that you went to LaSalle, which is a better school than Villanova.
Well, they're all good.
Do you think we'll ever see the day when there'll be white smoke coming out for the coffee?
No. Next question. No, my sister Carol Lee thinks it would be cool. I think she'd like to go to Rome. All the hoopla. I don't see that happening. But I didn't see this happening either. Who knows?
So another thing that people weren't aware of is there are two chapels of the same group.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Father Capodanno, Vincent Capodanno, and Emil Capon. Truly heroic men. Capodanno was a Maryknoll priest. He served in Vietnam, and he was called the Grand Padre. There's a book written about him called The Grand Padre, written by Father Dan Mode, who's on active duty as Navy chaplain, a priest friend of mine. He's still on active duty. He was up a couple weeks ago for Apostle Flag, so he might make that up. And it's a story of Capodanno who, during the Vietnam War, was killed in battle, on the battlefield. He went to the aid of a corpsman, and he was shot 27 times in the back, killed instantly, and his cause is up for canonization, and he received the Medal of Honor. And the other one is Father Emil Capon. Now, Capon was an army chaplain, and he served during the Korean War, and right after the Korean War, there was a big battle, and a lot of our guys were injured, and he was taking care of the injured people, and they were told to retreat. Father Capon stayed with the injured people. So he was captured with his other guys, and one of the guys who was injured was Sergeant Miller. He was in a ditch with a broken leg, and if you couldn't march, the Chinese soldiers would shoot you. And so the Chinese soldier was about to shoot Sergeant Miller when, to everyone's amazement, probably including the soldier, Father Capon just gently pushed the rifle away and went down and helped Sergeant Miller out of the ditch. and they basically half-carried, marched him for about 70 miles to the POW camp. Now, under the Geneva Convention, a chaplain is a non-combatant, meaning we don't carry weapons. The only weapon I carry are my rosary beads. So if we're captured, we're considered detained personnel, not POWs, which give us some rights to go around the camp ministering to the POWs. So Father Capon did that to a very heroic degree. The communists hated him. They tried to brainwash him. He just laughed at them. He used to steal food from the guards. They called him a good thief. Well, eventually he gets a gangrene in his leg, and he was dying. They went to carry him off to the hospital, which is the place where they take people to die. And all his men said, no, we'll take care of him. Don't take him. They knew what would happen. And he said, don't worry, boys. I'm going to where I always wanted to go. So he died, and then they lost track of him for many, many, many years. They thought he was just buried in a grave or maybe whatever. Only a couple years ago, they identified his body in the Punch Bowl, which is the national cemetery in Honolulu. After the Korean War, they took guys from our guys from graves, reburied them in the national cemetery in Honolulu, called the Punch Bowl, and then after many, many years of testing the remains for DNA, they discovered his body. They brought him home with full military honors to Wichita, Kansas, where he's now buried in a large coffin above ground in the cathedral. I went and visited there shortly after he came home. And then a couple years later, a couple years before that, they had a ceremony at the White House where they posthumously awarded him the Medal of Honor. And now he also is up for canonization. So they're two of the guys that Capon and Capodanno, we hope someday both will be canonized saints.
New Jersey too, right?
Staten Island.
Close enough.
So I'll stay seated because I don't want my back towards you, Sir Bishop. Excuse my ignorance. The bishop is being very humble, but it's funny, small world. As bishop related, I was a religious program specialist in the Navy, and I was from South Philly. And so we go to boot camp in Great Lakes, and then we go to a special training force in Meridian, Mississippi, which is population 30 in the middle of nowhere. And when religious program specialists like myself get an assignment to protect a particular officer that's a chaplain, because for the chaplain, it's the only officer billet that's 24 hours a day. There wasn't a time where I didn't come into the chaplain's bedroom because I slept right next to him at all times and knocked on the bedroom window and said, we have a problem, we have a crisis. It's not just the military person. When you're in the United States, you're dealing with their families and their kids and their baptisms. It's a lot of work. And you do have your rosary bead at all times with you. But when you go over to combat, I had never shot a gun in my life. And I thought, I got to protect this guy. And I had Father Jeffrey Nicholas, who's the rector in Louisville, Kentucky, and Trevor had you. And I remember our getting those assignments. And he said, Scott, this guy's from Philadelphia. I said, yeah, big deal. He wasn't from South Philly. We got really close. We're both on the George Washington. And I remember it's 24 hours a day. And especially since we have a Blessed Sacrament, so many of the Protestant ministers could split the load. The Catholic priesthood felt there was a lot of work, and when we were in combat, and you didn't know if you were coming home or not, it was a 24-hour job, and good, bad, or indifferent, there was a lot of news and a lot to deal with, and we knew he was going to be bishop before he did. He's got the good material. He had the smooth talk, and we it's 24/7. On the George Washington, I was on the USS Briscoe, and the George Washington Battle Group is famous because it shot its first Tomahawk missile 1,000 miles in and hit its target in Afghanistan. In Iraq, if you remember. The Briscoe, D-977 destroyer. So he's acting humble, but it's a heck of a job.
Trevor McCracken was my
That's
RP
right. He
from
was
Alabama.
101, yeah.
And he was really good. And I said to him, Trevor, this is a direct order. When you get out of the Navy, you're going to college. He goes, yes, sir.
Yeah.
He went to University of Southern California and has this degree.
Yes, that's right. Yes, great job. Good to see you. I said to my wife, "You think they'll recognize me?" And she said, "I don't recognize you." No, you didn't change. You didn't change one bit. Get a new one.
Now, Mr. Joe, where do you call home these days? Or do you have a
Ardmore,
I was
Pennsylvania.
just going to say.
It's near Villanova. That's where the Pope went. I don't know, John, if you ever knew that or not. At Ardmore, I lived in I was gone for 20 years in the military. And a couple years ago, I was able to go back to my hometown, back to Philly, back to South Jersey, back to the Eagles and cheesesteaks, hoagies, and hot pretzels, and I'm happy to be home. It's really fun to be home. All right, thanks everybody. God bless. Thank you.